Buenos dias, buenas tardes, good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to my channel, Divine Esme. And today I want to talk to you about how my divorce saved my life. Stay tuned. The word divorce has many different taboos associated with it. Divorce is actually looked at as a form of failure, and within some cultures, it may not even be an option. In today's world, divorce is actually becoming far more common than it has ever been before. Women are now initiating and filing for divorce at a much higher rate than men. My former partner and I, we both come from parents who divorced. And I remember us sitting down and joking and making a pact and saying, hey, we're going to kind of talk through our stuff, right? We don't want to end up like our parents. And it wasn't until I actually faced really difficult circumstances that led me into considering divorce myself. And it was a really hard realization for me. You see, my former partner and I, we both come from two different backgrounds, two different cultures, two different upbringings. I was raised to be very outspoken and independent as a Latina, and I came from an urban and Latinx community. And he was raised in the suburbs in a conservative family, and he was also in the military. So our worlds were completely different. But for some reason, I found this to be very, very, very intriguing. And you know, they say opposites attract, so we're gonna just roll with that. And I packed my bags after finishing graduate school, and I decided to move to where my spouse was residing, and he was stationed there. And I remember feeling some sense of fear and saying, like, are you really sure about this? Because this is completely different from the life that you're accustomed to. Like, this is the suburbs and you were used to being in an inner city. And I just tried so hard to adapt and to learn this way of life. And my own identity was sort of just washing away. Like, my views and my choices were no longer valued. They were extremely different in this new environment. My family times and holidays and outings were full of debates and political climaxes. And for years, I really tried to take on these viewpoints and not look at them personally. And even though they rubbed me wrong and they disrupted my beliefs and my values, both professionally and personally, I really attempted to take these things into consideration. And I remember speaking to my spouse and saying, you do realize I'm a Latina, right? Who grew up in an inner city. And some of these things really troubled me because as a social worker, I knew that some resources are important, and somehow we continue to just sweep things under the rug. And sadly, this was one of the many situations where I felt unseen, where I felt voided, and where I felt that I didn't have a voice. And now that I look back on it, I realize that that was maybe the start to my identity crisis. And during my marriage and relationship, I remember planning a lot of different things, and I remember us getting engaged and really not feeling supported and feeling like my spouse didn't want any part of it. And I poured so much into my marriage. I put so much time into my marriage to the point where I was sort of just putting myself in the back burner. And for years, I tried to shelter my spouse the way he was used to and began on taking a lot of responsibilities. I mean, they were endless. I made our medical appointments. I managed our finances. I assisted him in looking and registering for college. I coordinated our schedules. I encouraged our family time. I planned and paid for our vacations. I paid for us to get into our first two homes together. I remember finding our forever home and dealing with everything associated with closing. And I actually financed closing, and I even supported my spouse into his final career venture as a state police officer. And I took on maintaining the house while he was away in trainings and being away at the academy, all while still holding two jobs. And I made it so easy for him to kind of just sit back and relax without realizing that I was sort of operating as independent within a marriage. And what I mean by that is I was still operating as that 18-year-old girl who left my parents' house and did not return. And I felt like I needed to take care of everything so my world didn't crumble underneath me. And despite all that, I still felt like I never did enough. I still felt like I was digging myself into a hole, into a deeper and deeper hole. And somehow I still managed to kind of work on things with my professional development, and I passed my boards. I passed both my boards. And even though I didn't have a lot of support, I was able to navigate those things. And within 2 weeks of passing my last boards, I found out that my partner, who I had been with for a decade, was having an affair. And it wasn't just one affair, it was multiple affairs. And suddenly everything I worked so hard for meant nothing. I was faced yet again with being a part of another statistic, and now being a part of military divorce rates and contemplating divorce. And I spent months living with my spouse under the same roof. And it was a very difficult time for me. I decided to venture into finding a new job, and I buried myself into this job. And once I was out of work, I put my depressed hat back on and I checked out for the rest of the evening. And I remember me going into social settings and sort of dreading it because I didn't want to answer the questions about my marriage, about kids. I didn't want those questions because those questions fueled anxiety within me to the point of panic. And that's when I realized that I needed to get help, and I decided to enroll into therapy. And throughout this whole process, I was fortunate enough to have family and friends check in on me and support me the best way they could. Even my grandmother, who is no longer with us, Esmeralda, encouraged me and gave me strength every day. And it took so many mistakes, so much crying, so much laughter, and to the point where I was able to find reconnection again with family and friends. And it took a year, but I decided to pack my bags and leave my home for good, my forever home. And even though I had no plan, I still had a sense of gratitude and of hope. And I took about a month after leaving to research mediation and go through the process of mediation and start my divorce journey. And those mediation sessions were hard. They were difficult. And I left there crying all the time. And I tried really hard to be amicable and to be fair with my spouse. And despite all of that and caring for his needs, I still ended up in divorce court. And that process was so difficult too. And as I look back at this life trajectory, I noticed that I was really numb inside. I was in a life of what ifs, of fantasies of what I wanted this relationship to be, to the point that I stayed for a decade at my own expense. I was living with my spouse in an identity of being a wife and not Esme anymore. And it took me being completely away from him to sit with myself, with my thoughts, to realize that. And through therapy and the support of my family and friends, I began to let myself feel again and to reconnect to those things that tie me back to my identity. And slowly, I managed to feel whole again. I managed to find purpose and to be unapologetically me. I no longer felt fear, and I craved to learn, and I held my opinions, and I realized that I was never broken and my intuition never deceived me. Listen to your gut. And through everything, I realized as well that I was sort of starting to heal my inner child, and I was connecting to that child that felt a sense of abandonment when my father and my mom divorced. And I realized that a lot of things within my marriage and relationship were not healthy. I wasn't too hard to love. I wasn't too difficult to understand. My opinions did matter. I was just not in the right space. I wasn't in a space where I was able to flourish. It was dimming my light. It was holding me back from the things that were meant to be for me. And this is what happens with life sometimes. It works in extremely mysterious ways, and it has you go through these deep, deep, deep things to let you see your full potential and to show you that you are in fact worthy and that you can flourish in any environment that's meant for you. Relationships are not to be forced. They're not supposed to be hard. Your partner is supposed to help you flourish. It's supposed to help you be you. It's supposed to help you find your most authentic self, your most best self. They're supposed to uplift your spirit, and you're supposed to uplift their spirit. And I realized that my spouse and I, we weren't doing that. We weren't doing that for each other. That we, as much as we wanted to try to be together, we were holding each other back. And there is someone out there for him, like there is someone out there for me. And a lot of the things that were happening to us were working against us, and they were for a reason. And that's why I say that my divorce saved me, because I was operating into a life and being this person that was nothing of what I wanted to be. And I was being this person that completely diminished my identity as a Latina, as Esmeralda. I wasn't in a space where I was able to take in everything I've learned and been passionate about from my childhood into my adult life. It wasn't a space where I was able to share those things and feel comfortable and feel seen. So I wanted to sit here and hold this space of vulnerability with all you guys, not only as a person, but also as a clinician. And I wanted to be able to encourage others to share their story, to bring light to these difficult situations, because there are a lot of people that relate to them. And I want everyone to feel hopeful and to understand that there is so much more to life, and that sometimes things are going to be difficult, things are going to be hard, but really take on these things, take on this journey, and be your best self, and understand that there is a pot of gold at the end of this journey, and that your journey is yours, and you are only one person. You are only one. So be who you are, and find who you are, and be who you want to be for you, not for anyone else. I love you all. Thank you.